So we'll be talking about advanced endpoint and vulnerability management, as we were hearing from Steven and Nate, right? So they're talking about auto patch. So I think we are in sync. I know folks here might be very sick of me talking about boarding security stuff. So that's why I convinced Nick to join me to talk about very endpoint specific. So he has been talking about Intune Suite. The reason we are talking about this now, Nick and I, we work for state and local government customers, and I heard some question related GCC, and I was grinning. So we know some of the pain and whatnot. And very recently, Intune Suite and Vulnerability Management add-on has been released for the GCC customers. So we are seeing a lot of interest. Now, this is available commercial, but this kind of gives us added interest to talk about this again with all the customers. So Nick and I did a webinar very recently. We got good response. Kind of, we are doing the same for this audience. So with this, I'll go to the next slide. Nick, please. Okay. So I just want to talk about Northwest System Center User Group. It's a nonprofit community, and as part of Microsoft, we can like add to our gift program. And this worked. I just checked with Greg. It worked. So the donation is tax free. We are investing time, whatever, so that can be added. And most of the employers match. Just this is added thing, like just wanted I wanted to cover. Greg, you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, it's great that we are a 501c3, so it actually is a tax write-off thing. So, but yes, like Ashok was saying, depending on your employer, right, certain things you do, they'll kick in some money, or if you donate, they'll kick in some money too. So, yeah, appreciate that. It all goes to us bringing in speakers, paying for lunches, and basically helping us out in addition to sponsors. So, thanks.
Yeah, and as I was mentioning for Microsoft folks here, I know how to get that on the gift program. Anybody has any question can ping me. Okay, that's it. With this, I'll just hand it over to Nick. Nick, it's all over to you. Just talk about Intune Suite and endpoint thing.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Hey everyone, my name is Nick Cordova. I'm a cloud endpoint technical specialist here at Microsoft, and I work alongside Ashok in the state and local government space. Our role is primarily to act as a pre-sales technical resource around all things endpoint management. So that includes Autopilot, Intune, now Intune Suite, and we also cover Windows 365. In my past life, I was a systems administrator, managing endpoints and identities prior to Microsoft. And I've been at Microsoft now 3 years in the same role the whole time. So nice to meet everyone. I'm excited to talk a little bit about Intune Suite and show you it all as well today. I'll show you some of it anyways. So we're going to go through kind of some challenges that we noticed, what's new, what's all included in the suite, and then a little bit of demo here later. And feel free, I'll be trying to monitor the chat, but if you guys just want to, if there's any questions in the room, you just come off mute and ask. And Ashok, if you could monitor the chat for me.
Yeah, of course.
So some kind of evolution of endpoint management. I'm sure we've all been through some of this at some point, over the last few years or 10 years or whatever it may look like. One of these points I quickly want to highlight that's relevant for our conversation today is in the middle there. We have one called Endpoint Security Integration. The Microsoft folks in the room were talking about this a little bit more, but I think this is more relevant than ever now. As groups come together, as management and security are seen more as one. There's some overlap today in some of the tools. And, even at Microsoft, we're starting to notice, the Windows updates are now being integrated into Intune. There's more options for updating. There's more data insights on it. There's more ways to get reporting. So this is something I like to focus on, and Intune Suite actually directly adds to the value of integrating our endpoint security. Some of the other points: cloud transformation acceleration, analytics and AI now. We're seeing a lot of that, with our new Copilot products. But again, the cloud transformation acceleration, as we migrate more and more workloads to the cloud, and one thing I'll say is some of the folks, depending if we're commercial or state and local government, so our commercial folks might be further along in this journey and utilizing full Entra joint devices, definitely hybrid. But in the government space, sometimes we're a few years behind. So this is all still relevant to our endpoint folks there. Just some common themes that we felt, I wouldn't say gaps, but ways that we could improve our services, specifically in Intune, or ways that we saw organizations still looking to solve for. Um, Prevent breaches and fill security holes. That one's always common. We're always trying to stay up to date on that. Manage application updates and vulnerabilities. This is a big one, and Ashok will talk a little bit later from the MDVM perspective on how that helps solve there. But app updates, third-party app updates has always been, a difficult problem to solve. Previously with partner solutions, but now with a native offering in Intune. The advancement of gaining visibility and control into our environments, we can always improve our data and insights and reporting capabilities. And then simplifying the collaboration between IT and security teams. So we kind of ventured out to attempt to solve some of these and fill some of these gaps within Intune. So for a high level view, just to kind of recap on the suite offerings and what that actually entails. Intune Plan 1 is what we all have with our E3, E5 licensing today. The Intune suite is a completely additional add-on SKU to Intune that's brought and made available via the portal. So that's not to say that there's not still a large investment in Intune Plan 1 features. It actively receives new features all the time, and we'll still continue to build out features there. If for those who stay pretty frequently up to date on things that are coming to Intune P1 capabilities, we'll hear as of last week things like Platform SSO for Mac OS, which just released. Drivers and firmwares recently, auto patch in the past. So there's still a ton of value in that licensing. However, the suite kind of takes it to the next level. The suite encompasses all the features that are shown on the right side here. We can also bring any of these features into our environment as an a la carte option here. And then we can also package together Intune Plan 2 down at the bottom, which is a little more specific to mobile and specialty devices. Are the slides moving for you there? Oh,
Yeah.
there they go. All right, so Microsoft Intune Suite. Just curious, I can try and see in the room, but is anyone using the full suite today in their environment, or a portion of it, or any of the solutions?
No,
No.
nobody from the room.
Costed money, no.
I tested remote help.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, just curious. So Microsoft Intune Suite encompasses 6 features. There's a couple more if we talk about some of the smaller Intune Plan 2 features, but these are primarily the big ones. Remote help and endpoint privilege management seem to be kind of the most common features, if they were to be brought on a la carte or that are just driving kind of some of the suite value. Those were also the first 2 features released in the commercial space. So the product has been available for about, I want to say, a year in the commercial space. But in the commercial space, the different features were made available at different times. Ashok and I just got access to be able to talk to these on April 1st, in which the full suite was made available all at the same time. So it kind of seems like a second launching of the suite itself. And now we're kind of going back and continuing to talk about it, considering there's more features and the product has matured a little bit over the last year. So first off, we have remote help. This is your standard remote control tool. It's built natively into the Intune portal and is managed with a app called the Remote Help application. Today, we support Windows, Mac OS, and Android. This has your standard, screen sharing capabilities. We have annotations, chat, pointers, as well as the ability to elevate to UIC as an administrator. I'll show this one briefly, or at least the management or where we can launch from in the Intune portal. But remote help's pretty straightforward. Enterprise app management. So this is actually an enterprise application catalog that we've connected. It's hosted in Microsoft Cloud Services and connected to Intune. At initial launch, I believe there was 100 applications that were made available to us, GA. And again, these are, at the end of the day, they're Win32 applications that we've automated some of the metadata for us to be able to easily go ahead and deploy to devices in our environment. We're getting these applications and their updates directly from the vendors. So we have update capabilities that where applications will self-update. This one, we'll continue to add applications. There's active development and they're releasing applications at, I don't know the pace that we're expecting to have, but I know, as far as competitive solutions go, we're nowhere near the amount of applications that some of those options have available. So I'll throw in into the chat a quick link on the applications made available today. And you can take a look and see, how relevant those services might be to your organization. Microsoft and Ashok, how much time do I have until 11:45?
Yeah.
Really 12:15 or so if you want. Yeah.
Okay. Microsoft Cloud PKI. This allows us the ability to host some of our PKI in the cloud and deliver it to Intune managed devices. At initial launch, there's essentially a version 1 of this solution that has some capability, maybe not all capability to, or actually not all the capability to eliminate our on-prem infrastructure, but we can supplement some of those delivering of certificates with this service in the cloud. Advanced endpoint analytics. This is what I talked about, continuing to gain insights on data and additional reporting in Intune. There's a few different features that's encompassed in this one. The first is device timeline, which is meant to help our support staff kind of see the health of a device that they might be troubleshooting and creating a timeline of Windows events that's graphed out for us in the Intune portal. The next one is battery usage reporting. So this is underneath the endpoint analytics tab. It's going to give us battery usage based on model, application, various different devices, and will show us that those insights across all of our devices state. The last one is device query, which I'll show actually here in a bit. And it is going to allow us to use KQL queries against multiple different properties made available to us in the Intune portal. And it is in real time. So super powerful for those folks, that are comfortable with those queries, similar to how, the security folks are using runbooks. Endpoint privilege management, I'm going to talk about this one in depth in the demo in a second, so I'll just pause on that one for now. And tunnel for mobile application management. This is going to allow us to use the capability of Microsoft Tunnel that exists today, but now we can extend that to unenrolled devices. So any BYOD devices, we can extend the capabilities of Tunnel to for mobile application management. All right. I think I had one slide on. Yeah, I'm gonna just jump to the portal now. All right, so Microsoft Intune Suite is kind of scattered throughout the Intune portal, I would say. We have a few of the features that we have access to via tenant administration. We have remote help as well as cloud PKI. Remote help here, again, we only have a few settings to make decisions on how it's going to interact in our environment. But as soon as the licenses are added to the tenant, essentially these all light up in their various different places, and then we can go ahead and configure and deploy them. So here, to enable remote help, we have basically enabled disabled capabilities. Do we want to allow remote help to our unenrolled devices? And then do we want to disable chat? So I mentioned we can start these sessions directly from the Intune portal, but we also have the standard kind of code sharing that we might be used to with remote control tools today with remote help. So if I'm an administrator, one of the ways that I can deploy a session is directly from here in the Intune portal. So this is one of my devices, and I go to the device action tab, and I have a new remote assistance session. I used to have a TeamViewer connector enabled, so that's why we see this here. But basically, I would just kick off the remote help tool and launch it from here. The end user would get a pop-up notification from their application, and they would have to accept my session in order to join. Today, there's no unattended access control. I don't know how many of us, that's a hard requirement from remote control tool. I believe it's in the investigation phase, not currently on the public roadmap, but that's probably the most common request we get from customers is to the ability to connect via remote access or via unattended access.
I know in our environment, we have, 10% that require that. So it's definitely something that I think people look for.
Yeah, definitely. So for some, it's a non-starter. For some, it's a small percentage of devices. But that's a very common request, and we've been submitting, that feedback to the PG and engineering about that as well. So
Is there,
I would
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, is there, like metadata available, like in graph or somewhere where I can, let's say I'm working on a system, can I look to see if remote help has been launched before or recently for that device?
So we have some reporting capability on the remote help tab. We have session reporting. So we can see provider, recipient name, device name, OS, and then start and end of those sessions. Beyond that, I don't think there's any additional, but start and stop we can see as well as the provider and recipient, plus some device information.
Thanks.
Yep. Now I'm going to jump into endpoint privilege management. Again, outside of remote help, I think this is probably the most common or asked about solution within the suite. We start with our elevation settings policy, which can be seen as a tenant-wide policy, how the service is going to interact with our environment and our users. If I go down here, I'll be able to select. Here's where we're enabling it. We're going to set the default elevation response. In my environment, it's denial request. And then we have our elevation data for reporting. Do we want to include what type of elevations do we want to include in our environment? So that would be our tenant-wide policy. And then I'm going to go and set our rules. This is how we scope to our users or our devices. And once it's enabled, the end user devices would get a lightweight agent and program file installed on their device. So I'll go back. Next, we have our elevation rules policy. I'm going to show an example of one I already have included in here. And I'll talk about the different validations that we can include in these rules. So this is a elevation type of user confirmed. I have my rule name here. I'm going to go to the instance of where I've set all the properties. So in our rule properties, we're setting what's called elevation conditions. There's three options for that. We have user confirmed, automatic, or support approved. Automatic are exactly what it sounds. So if a user requests to elevate, they're going to automatically be allowed. We'll report on that instance, but we're not requesting any elevation conditions. So user confirmed is going to require a validation from that user. The validations offered today is a business justification, which is a couple words or a phrase justifying why the user needs elevated access to the application, and then a Windows authentication. In the future, MFA will be added directly to this. The Windows authentication can use Windows Hello for Business if we're utilizing that today. The third, and this was just added a couple weeks ago, but it's support approved elevation type. And this is going to be your one-time access or single use elevated access for an end user. So a user would go to the application, they would go to the context menu in the EPM box. They would click on that, and they would put in a support request for elevated access. That request would then go to the Intune portal, and a administrator who has the correct RBAC control would then approve or deny that request, and the end user would have 24 hours to go use their elevated privileges. So down here, put in the file information. I have my file name here. I can utilize the file path if I'd like. And then the only other required property here is the source. So we can utilize a file hash, which I'm doing here, but I can also upload a certificate file, to be used in multiple different places. So those are how we set the rule. Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned the elevation type support approved, and then you said 24 hours. Does that mean they can launch it one time in 24 hours, or they can launch it multiple times, but they only have 24 hours to do it?
Correct. It expired. The approval of allowing the elevation expires in 24 hours.
So run it as much as you want before that 24 hours.
Right. And the same thing goes, I left this out, but so we have the ability to control any child processes in that initial elevation. So we can set or deny additional elevations or require additional rules. But for that support approved today on initial launch, it is that 24-hour model. I'm not sure the plans there. I hope that that kind of evolves into the granularity that we have with PIM today, because that would be awesome to set windows of times or expiration dates, etc. But we'll kind of see where that where this elevation type specifically goes, because it is in its infancy.
Okay. And my other question for file hash, is that a manual process to
Yeah.
get that pasted?
Yeah. Today we're utilizing EPM power module with PowerShell to pull that. I think most folks are utilizing certificates because those file hashes will change up with any application updates. So now let me jump to Nate. Yes, good question. So when I talked about the data earlier, do we want to include all endpoint elevations? That is one of the reasons I mentioned that. And that's because if we go to reports, we have multiple different reports right here. You'll see both managed and unmanaged elevation policies. So here I can see in my environment, anyone who has the EPM tool deployed to it, we're going to take data and report on it against all of those elevation policies. So we'll see the ones that don't have rules in from. We'll obviously see the ones that do have rules, but this can help us as an IT org maybe understand some applications that are out there that folks are requesting elevated access for. And whether that requires, a support ticket and is taking time, maybe we can put in a role for that, or we can investigate why they're requesting elevated access to those applications. Valid scenario to use. Yeah, definitely, we want to limit the number of local admins in our environment, regardless of how we're using it. Maybe we're using laps, whatever it may be. I've heard folks talk about using it for applications that require elevation for updates, but they, approve of that elevation, or the end user might have some sort of admin privileges today. But now we can scope it, directly to that certificate file and eliminate the need for full local admin privileges. So I'm here in my environment with EPM deployed to it. So I have my standard run as administrator here, and then down here in the context menu, we have run with elevated access. So this is actually the EPM service itself. I can run as administrator. I have local admin on this device, but if I go to run with the EPM service and say I didn't have local admin, I would not be able to elevate this application because there's not a rule in place there. So now if I go over to 7-zip, where I do have a rule, I can run with elevated access. This is my first validation of justification. And then now I have my Windows authentication. So in the future, this would be, potentially just an MFA authentication. But now I'm running this application in an elevated instance. Any child processes that I go from here that require elevation, I would have the ability, to set more policy on that. But as soon as I close this application, I've lost my elevated privileges, and then I need to go back through those validations again to get elevated access. And, of course, all of that will be reported on. So that in a nutshell is EPM. I think that we'll probably see a lot of future investment in this solution to get to where some of those other privilege management tools are today. But we're feeling really good about this feature specifically in Intune Suite. Ashok, how much more time do I have, or do I need to turn it over to you for your 30 minutes?
Do you have anything dangling that you want to cover? I think you can go for it.
Okay, yeah, let me just touch on one of the endpoint analytics pieces real quick. So this would be some of the advanced endpoint analytics capabilities. I go down here on a specific device and I go to user experience. Down here, this is what some of the battery health capabilities are. I mostly have VMs in my environment, so I actually don't even have some data here. But you can get an idea. We can see model performance, interactive apps consuming battery life, non-interactive apps consuming battery. This is the one that I really like for our endpoint and support folks who are spending time, on devices. So you can see kind of a timeline that we can go back in time to see what's happening on this device if a user is complaining about having a poor experience. You can see I have some in my Windows 365 Cloud PC, some app hangs, some app crashes, some boots, all my logins. So just kind of cool information that, we can visually see, how this device is behaving. And the last feature that I mentioned um, in Advanced Endpoint Analytics is the device query. Let me see if I can pull one. Just to show that it is pretty quick. So we have all these various different properties that we can run queries against, and I'll just go ahead and run one here. Hopefully it comes back in a respectable amount of time.
Is this part always real time, actually reaches out to devices real, or is there any cached or other things it uses?
Yeah, real time. But as you notice, I just got an error. But yes, it is. So all the documentation, it is happening in real time here, which, as we know, in Tune, there's traditionally that 8-hour period. So seeing some more, quick responses here is nice to see. There we go. So we got that second attempt, within a couple of seconds there. And these are all configure all is stuff KQL queries. I think, looking down in the future with Copilot and Intune Copilot, this capabilities will, I think we'll have a lot of additional capabilities built kind of around these device queries here. And that's it. I'm gonna hand it over to Ashok now. I'll hang around for questions in the chat. If anyone has any follow-up questions or anything, you can get my email or contact from Ashok. But thanks for letting me join and talk to the community today.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. Show up on my computer. It's showing for
It's happened. Gotta read quickly.
that's right.
Weird.
Weird. Yeah.
Trick. Yeah. Here's how you did that, Ashok.
You better. Okay. Okay, we saw some funky thing now. Happens. So, okay, I'll talk about Microsoft Defender for Vulnerability Management. And as you heard from Nick and AutoPatch folks, the point that we are trying to make is bridging the gap between IT and security. Patch management has been the IT administrator thing, and security has been security thing. But we are seeing a lot of overlap, and we are trying to bridge the gap. And in my world, when I'm talking to a lot of organizations, I'm seeing that IT organizations, IT administrators and security administrators, they are changing their roles because we are thinking or envisioning a world where those things could be together and there would be overlap. So with this context, Defender for Vulnerability Management comes to picture, which has a lot of great feature about vulnerability management. Greg, how long do I have time?
Till 12:15, 12:20.
Okay, you stop me whenever you want. And I just realized my sessions come either before the Friday happy hour or before the lunch. So you have all reasons to stop me. So, okay. Okay. So let's move on. I'll kind of cut some of the slides so that I can show you on the demo environment. And I'll show you a GCC tenant so that you are basically sure that it will be in your environment. Kathy or somebody I saw in the chat, like they're asking about GCC. So you can be very sure that whatever I'm showing is actually available in all the environment. Okay. So with this, today I was thinking to cover some of the common challenges, vulnerability management across all the platforms. So it's not like only Windows or something. So it's actually Microsoft is thinking about everything all together. So I have a slide to cover that. And what's new in vulnerability management? I think that's the reason Nick and I are doing a lot of webinars these days, because Microsoft Vulnerability Management was part of the core features which came with Defender for Endpoint. And I saw maybe George is already using and some of the folks are already using. But there are some additional new capabilities we are calling premium that I'm going to cover. And again, I'll just cover some of the technical demo as well. So with this, let's talk about the current threat landscape. And as we are thinking about security, proactive security is mantra these days. Like, it's not that something happens and breach happens and what you do after that, what we can measure and protect and control before something bad happens. And that's the reason those by default capabilities that we are talking about, be it auto patch, be it like security by default, or being like just identifying some of the misconfigurations and vulnerabilities beforehand. That's what important, because now we are seeing increased attack surface all over the world. I think that's why it's very important to understand, to know the attack surface. Another thing is fragmented visibility. We are using a lot of security tools. They don't talk to each other. So how we can unify the platform so that security administrator and IT administrator can have a bigger, better, clear picture to work on that. And next one is lack of resources. I think we are moving in a world that we would not have enough people to do the enough jobs that we have, right? So that's why this generative AI and everything is come into picture. However, the security administration and unification and how we can make sure things are kind of aligned and correlated so that one person can do the other things together, and how we can interact and operate different tools together. So that's why it's very important. And on that aspect, I was telling the story that I saw a lot of customers in state and local government, security administrator and IT administrator, they're kind of switching the roles so that they understand the overall threat landscape. And the last one in the list is reactive protection. We are done with that. How we can make sure like we can identify the vulnerabilities as we are seeing it. And I was going through one of the article from NVD, which is NIST and Vulnerability Management Database. And from 2005 to now, the number of vulnerabilities in each month has grown exponentially. Like now, each month there would be 2,000s of vulnerabilities. Back in 2005, it was like few hundreds or whatnot. So you can understand we are. It's the threat landscape is increasing, so we need to identify all those vulnerabilities, and we don't want to be in this moment like the log4shell happened and we are caught off guard. We had no clue what's happening, so that we know what's happening. At least understanding the landscape, identifying the patching requirement, and remediating those vulnerabilities.
Anybody remember the old "I love you" virus? Wasn't that like a VB script and sneaker net? And that's how we have.
Yep, yep. Last of ours.
Yes, it's Laster. Yeah. Good times.
So with this, I think if you compare, it's not what Microsoft and other technology vendor is talking about. It's from the Gartner. And if you see the top strategic trends, there are 10 of them, and definitely AI and all those things there. But continuous threat and exposure management is one of the big things. That's the reason right now vulnerabilities, exposure management is kind of getting a lot of more attention. So with this, what I am talking about, right? So Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management is part of Microsoft Enterprise Suite, like EMS or whatnot that you are using. Some of the premium features that I would be talking about that needs add-on. You can purchase that from as a license, or for your server, you can get it from Defender for Server Plan 2. But our idea is vulnerability management across all the platform, be it Windows, be it Mac, OS, or Linux. If you think about your mobile operating system, iOS, Android, all those things are covered. But it goes beyond. Like, think about your network appliances, network devices. And another thing is IoT and OT devices. If you are tracking your Defender portal, we have been adding a lot of new things like OT capabilities, IoT capabilities. And from your cloud world, if you have Defender for Cloud, you can manage your servers as well. So in a nutshell, if you have Defender for Endpoint, that's the engine. That's what it will be required. It's not that you would be needing another agent for vulnerability management. Defender for Endpoint is the engine which would be powering your vulnerability management solution. Now we have another solution which is agentless. Whenever you have MDE, it is agent based. But for your Windows 10, Windows 11 devices, think it's kind of in a sleeping mode. When you have license, when you want to activate, it starts working. But Windows 11 and Windows 10, you already have MDE in a nascent mode, but you can get that turned on. But there are scenarios where you can use it agentless, like for example, your Azure virtual machines, or maybe your containers or whatnot. But if you think about the big picture, all the different scenarios about server, workstations, devices, IoT, OT, everything can be powered and you can get the solution for Defender for vulnerability management. So this is big, and this is part of Microsoft's overall vision and picture on exposure security management scenario. Like we call it XSPM. So that's a extended security posture management. Now, if you are already using Defender for Endpoint, you already have access to vulnerability management dashboard. It's giving a lot of capabilities like, for example, security recommendations, remediations. It's giving you software inventory. It can power up your alerts and incidents, all those good things. But recently, we launched some of the new capabilities. And they are basically, for example, the first one, security baseline assessment. Now, if you know about a little bit audit and assessment, auditors would be looking for your environment. If it's compliant with CIS benchmark, are you following the Windows operating system benchmark from STIG or whatnot? Uh, Defender Vulnerability Management has baseline assessment feature that you can leverage and make sure that you are compliant. And this is a continuous monitoring. It's not on demand. You don't need to do on demand. This is like running all the time. And if you have a compliance drift, it will be showing from the portal. So this is running everything. So this is for your Windows and all those operating system. Next one is browser extension inventory. This is another feature. Like for example, you are using Edge, Chrome, or Firefox browsers, and your users can install any of those extensions, which can have some vulnerabilities and risk. But browser extension inventory can help you identify them. Similarly, you can inventory your digital certificates. You can do an inventory of like your hardware and firmware from your operating system. If you're running laptops or any devices, it will validate that. You can do a network share analysis. Like for example, you are managing a network share where you want to see that, okay, do you have any offline access of the share? All those things you would never know. And there can be assessment that you can do. And lastly, there are devices and servers that would not have ability to install any agents, right? So how do you do assessment of them? So there are authenticated scan that can be done on your network devices as well as your Windows devices. Like think about your unmanaged Windows devices where you cannot install agent, you can run those authenticated scan. These are kind of high level new features that has been introduced. How you can get that? You can get as add-on license on top of your E5 or G5 license for security for your workstations and endpoints. But if you have servers, you can get it from Defender for Server Plan 2. Which would get you all those features. So Microsoft is kind of envisioning this whole picture where you can manage your servers as well as your workstations, devices, and all those scenarios. Any questions till now? I'm not able to monitor my chat, but let me please come offline and ask if you have any questions.
So far, so good.
That's good. Okay. So I can talk about all these features, like for example, any vulnerability management solution, if you think about, it should have four different features. Like it should do the assessment and visibility. As I'm talking about, it's a proactive security, you need to have the visibility. It should help you on the risk prioritization because in the world of security now, it's kind of finding needle in a haystack, right? So how do you identify which remediation do you want to chase for, right? So on that reason, risk prioritization is important. And from vulnerability management solution, it can give you the risk score, the impact score, the exposure score, so that you can take action. Which one do you need to fix right now versus which you can like kind of put it in a back burner. Similarly, as I'm talking about the remediation, how this can integrate with Intune so that you can do blocking of any application, or if you are trying to patch any Windows updates or whatnot, you can do it from MDVM portal. And Microsoft is integrating a lot of things from vulnerability management and Intune. So you would see the simplified security settings or whatnot, which is kind of game changer. And last one is like dashboarding and data access. So there are different capabilities that I will go through. There are dashboard, there are KQL queries, there are Power BI capabilities that you can integrate. So you have all those different capabilities. Now let's go through the portal so that you can see something in live. Okay. Hope everybody can see my screen. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with security.microsoft.com portal that we call the Defender portal. In the room, how many of you are using or have access to it? Okay, very good, very good. And hopefully, from the folks on the Teams chat, you also have access to Defender portal. Okay, so now in Defender portal, with all those different defenders that Microsoft has, vulnerability management is one of the solution, right? So this is part of your endpoint where you get all these features and capabilities. Now, as I'm talking about the core capabilities, recommendations, remediations, inventory, weaknesses, event timeline, those are core capabilities. However, in inventory, there are new features that you need to be added. However, the baseline assessment is a premium capability, but you have access to your Defender portal. That means you can run your vulnerability management. You know, go to a new portal or new things or whatnot. Now, what you can do in vulnerability dashboard, think about you are playing a role of IT administrator or security administrator, and your job is to make sure your organization is secure and it's kind of maintaining baseline security, right? So when you are going through the portal, your job would be how you can reduce the exposure score. You can monitor that. As you see in my environment, I'm not doing good job. It's 70, which is pretty high. So you want to reduce the exposure score. Similarly, you want to improve your device score or your secure score. That's how you can start. Like if you ask me, how do you use this dashboard? Your one of the North Star you can take is reducing the exposure score and increasing the device score. And similarly, on the recommendation side, you can go through what are the top recommendations, what are the devices that need some activities, what are the top events, what are the vulnerable software, so that you get a dashboard or overall picture how his environment is doing. Now, talking about recommendations, you can go through all the recommendations and take action accordingly. Now, to take the action, I think risk prioritization is important, right? So I would draw your attention to a few things. Like, for example, you can go through the threat score. Like here, the beetle sign means this particular vulnerabilities or recommendation from Microsoft has been exploited somewhere in the internet. There are some computers out there in the internet that got exposed. That might be concerning for you, but if you see this target sign turned on, that means this is active breach in your environment. So that's how you can take action. So whenever you see those red beetle sign or those target sign as red, you can take action. Next one, you can go through the impact. That means when you remediate this particular recommendation, which has 109 vulnerabilities or weaknesses, and which has very high weakness or impact score, that means when you remediate that, you are basically improving your secure score so that you can take action accordingly. Now, how do you go through that? Now you can take different actions. Like, this is about the recommendations, right? Update Windows Server 2019. You can know what are the devices which is exposed. I have one Windows server which is kind of exposed, and it will tell you exactly what are the server associated CVEs that it will populate all the CVEs. You can go through some of the more additional details about what is the CVSS score so that you can take action accordingly. And similarly, you can go through the activities that you need to plan. So it gives you overall picture about a specific recommendations and how you want to go through that. Now, there is one other way you can take approach. Like, for example, if I want to take some of the Windows-based vulnerabilities, maybe I take this one and I go to my install devices. This is one of the laptops that I'm managing. I can go through that. So you have two views. One is you can go through from the dashboard, you take a big picture and go manage each recommendations. On the other hand, if you see any device which is vulnerable, you can go from the device as well, like this. This is my laptop that I'm managing. I can go through, does it have any incidents and alerts? It doesn't, which is a good thing. I can go through the timeline, which will give you if there are any 0 days or whatnot in my environment. It gives all the different details. Similarly, I can go through the security recommendation for this particular device. If you get that any particular device is kind of marked as vulnerable or top device that you want to remediate, you can go through that. Similarly, you can go through the inventory. In inventory, I can go through what are the vulnerable component. So you have all those different details to go through at different layer. Like for example, you can go through by device perspective, you can go through a dashboard perspective, or you can go to a vulnerable component or software perspective. So you can pick and choose based on your organization how you want to cover that, but you have all those details. Like for example, on the screen you see there is a vulnerable component OpenSSL on my computer, and I want to see show me the evidence. It kind of gives you exact details, what is the path, where it is installed, so that you can take very clean and proper action. And you want more details about this particular component, it gives you more details about OpenSSL, what are the vulnerabilities, what are the CVs, and all those different aspects. So if you're thinking about overall threat landscape, CVSs are important. The device code is important. It's giving all those different details. Now, talking about generative AI, so this particular remediation or description is actually generated by AI, so that it's actually, that it's kind of querying Microsoft database, IBM database, or NVD database to give you some of the recommendation. Otherwise, you're kind of struggling. I have this CVSS item. What do I do? Like think about that Log4j day. Like first few days, people did not have any clue what's happening, right? So if you have all those proactive security measures, you can take actions. So that's kind of a beauty of the platform. There are a lot of things kind of integrated together so that you can take proper actions and you can remediate. Any questions till now? Does it kind of resonate what you are looking for or some of your job that you are kind of playing at this point?
We did have one question to ask. If
Sure.
you can show anything in the network shares analysis.
Okay, awesome. So let me go through to show you that particular setting. I don't have on this environment, so I'll go through another bigger environment and I'll show you. So regarding network share, it's part of your recommendations. So what you can do, you can filter by some of the recommendations, right? So you can do filter by remediation type. So what you need to do, you filter by operating system and you select this particular link. If you are kind of watching this, kind of go through that, select this and apply. So what it does, it kind of queries all the different recommendations that Microsoft is having, and it will point out very specific to network share. Hopefully it's populate. So as you see in this particular demo tenant that I have, it has some of the network share, which is allowing offline access to the share. So let me go through what is that about, right? So it gives me recommended option. It gives me exposed devices. It gives me some of the recommended options. It's basically telling me that I need to go to the shared folder and turn off some of the features like online settings or whatnot. So this is about the network share. Let me know if whoever asked this question kind of answer your question. Sounds good. I'll go back to my demo environment. Now, as I'm talking about some of the recommendations, so you can take action, you can create exception. Like for example, in your organization, you might find some of the Microsoft recommendations are not applicable. So it's always good practice to create exception for that so that the auditors or your cloud security admin would not bug you. However, if you do think that this is actually needs a recommendation, so you can create those recommendations. Like for example, I can create software update or software uninstallation. I can select a date and I can move on, and I can create mitigation action. Like, for example, that Google Chrome, if this is not allowed in my organization, I can warn or I can block it. So I can take any of the actions, whatever I want. So I know I'm kind of going out of time, so I'll just cover a couple of things. So you can cover baseline assessment. This is one of the premium feature. You can create baseline profile for your Windows or server systems, and you can just do a compliance check periodically, continuously on your environment. This is one feature I would talk about. And if you're thinking about any dashboarding capabilities, I think you can use your dashboard. You can use some of the APIs which is available, API Explorer, and you can run some of the queries from the vulnerabilities like here. Additionally, you have some of the hunting capabilities. In advanced threat hunting capabilities, you have a lot of new logs that is introduced. Like, for example, this is the portion I would like to talk about, which is vulnerability management. And all these logs that you are seeing on the screen, those are new logs, which is available all the customers as part of your MDVM benefits. So you can start using and start querying. And one of the query that I like, it kind of gives you all the CISA related vulnerabilities, which is kind of might be available in your environment. Like, for example, you search for CISA. This is one of the tool query that you have. If you can run that, it can give you some of the vulnerabilities on your environment. So I think I had this. My environment, this is the one. Let's run. And this is a query. It kind of identifies different CVs in your environment, and it kind of gives you all the details. Now, I'll kind of close it. There are a lot of new things coming on vulnerability management side. If you are trying to use in your multi-tenant environment, so mto.security.microsoft.com has this capability. So you can go through your vulnerability management dashboard in your multi-tenant environment. If you are managing multi-tenancy, I would definitely recommend this. Similarly, MDVM supports unified RBAC, so that if you want to control the specific access to your vulnerability management portal, it has that capability. Just go research a little bit of on vulnerability management. Now, if you want to look for some additional training on vulnerability management, I would definitely recommend the Ninja training, and I'll post it in the chat. Please go through. And it has one of the training module as well, which we'll kind of talk about. You can get a certificate. So if you do a knowledge check, which has kind of 8 very top level questions, you just answer and get your screenshot and send it to Microsoft, you'll get a certificate. So with this, I'll kind of conclude my presentation. Go try vulnerability management dashboard and some of the capabilities that you have. Feel free to ask any questions, and I can do follow-up sessions on that. It was kind of rushed session today. It has a lot of topics. It's like half an hour is very less to talk about all the things. But anyway, I hope it was very useful for you. Any questions while I hang in? Thank you very much. MD's finest cloud services. Okay, that's good. Cool.
Question, an issue I run into. So when I'm looking at a system and trying to determine the operating system details, where
Yeah.
like if it's Windows 10 Enterprise, IoT,
Yeah.
or LTSC, I can't figure out how to find that in here. All it tells me is it's Windows 10.
Okay. Are you talking about from the software inventory or when you're going to assets and your
Is it
endpoint?
anywhere in here that I just haven't found yet?
Okay, so did you check the software inventory? So let's go through, take one of those recommendations, right? So if I take recommendations and like, for example, I'll try to go through one of the versions. So you are talking about the operating system. Let's click any operating system. Let's see this. If I go through this, expose devices. It gives you the version on the applications. Like, for example, let's take this one. It gives you the CVs, but you are basically looking for the operating system. I think you can do it with KQL, with some of the KQL capabilities. So let me search that. I think you would be able to do those advanced query using KQL. So it will give you some of the versions. I've seen a lot of customers ask about, give me the version of that. Like I have Chrome or any other applications running on my operating system. So right now I can find all those versions, different versions. But anything on the operating system, I think we can find a KQL query to find that.
Next, we got a computer that unfortunately hasn't talked to Active Directory since December, and it came online. It's talking to MDE, and MDE is reporting it as end of life for the operating system.
Right.
But in Active Directory, it says it's an IoT LTSC, which should still be supported. So
Okay.
I can't figure out in Defender what is Defender seeing in the operating system?
Okay. So quick question on that. So your MD is detecting means MD is detecting as it is installed, or it's finding as part of your network, there is one MD device is talking to that particular server.
That I don't know.
Okay. I think if it's
I think it is talking to MD.
okay, if it's a talking as a smart devices, I think it might not be able to pick that because it's finding using SNMT protocol. One thing you can try, if you have access to that particular operating system or the computer, try to install MD, and then I will get you more.
The location where it's at, I've asked him, can you please look at this and tell me what you see on it that it's running?
Yeah.
So by the way, it hasn't talked to Active Directory since December, so you've got some other issues.
Wow. Okay.
So MDE won't have the SKU. We don't capture that in the MDE platform itself. But we're just having a look at the moment.
Yeah.
We just look at the version.
Okay.
That's what most people.
I've got another LTSC system that's a newer LTSC that otherwise would be out of support, and MDE is not saying it's end of support.
Yeah, and that's the complicating factor. So I think it's something we need to investigate as to why we're reporting incorrectly. But it comes down to.
I see that it's reporting incorrectly. I got to get somebody hands on the computer. Go, why is Active Directory say this, and what is it actually?
Yeah. If you have Config Manager on there, you'll be able to see.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, since it hasn't talked to Active Directory since December, it also dropped out of
aged out
Manager. So
9 days default. Yep.
It's like, okay, somebody's got to get hands on that computer.
Yeah, exactly. Identify where it's located. Maybe just go do something.
Everybody can just UNC to it, right? And then just do VB info.
Thanks.
Good question. Any other questions? All good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.